The United States reports that over 73% of millennials are carrying at least $38,000 in student loan debt. And I can guarantee you that the numbers are no better in Zambia. I, for one, am also a person who's had to deal with debt in the recent past. But imagine my surprise when my guest today said, nah, debt is nothing. It's just reverse in savings. My guest today is Mwaka Kopakopa. She is an investment professional with over 10 years experience. She is passionate about helping her clients maximize their investment options, and she's also an avid mentor for young minds. Thank you for coming to the show, Mwaka.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
Okay, and so our discussion started yesterday. Mwaka and I are in an investments group together, and I mentioned how I was debt averse, and your answer was?
Well, there's nothing to be afraid of about debt. Mm-hmm. I think if you can save, then you can carry debt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so if debt is as simple as just reverse of savings, why is it such a big problem?
So the problem really comes on with cash flows and people's mindsets. So the difference between saving for something, say 6 months from now, and actually getting into debt to acquire that something today is that if I go borrow to buy a car today and pay down in 6 months, I'll have my car now. And so I literally have a bit of satisfaction at this moment, but then I have to make payments towards my debt. But then if I'm going to save in 6 months, literally I'm still reducing my disposable income because there's a portion that I have to put aside. 6 months later, buy a car. So now one will ask you, savings have interest that you earn, and on debt you pay.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, and so on debt you pay interest. So, but then we have a concept that nobody ever looks at. There's inflation. So the value of my money today is not the same as 6 months from today. So I'll be saving.
No, but how dramatically will inflation affect the value of your money? I feel like it's understandable if you're talking like over a long-term period, but short-term, 6 months to a year?
Okay, so I'll give you an example of cement. I think people who were building last year were buying cement at below 50 kwacha. Today, a bag of cement is 120 kwacha. So what happened? That's the inflation, right?
Zambia is an anomaly.
Well, no, but it happens everywhere. I mean, look, with the coronavirus, a lot of things have changed. A lot of economies have gone into recession. You know, a lot of businesses have had to come to a standstill because things have changed. And so those are the pressures that you do not know will happen. And so the only reason why the whole element of interest exists is that if I'm going to save money and it earns me interest, I'm trying to maintain its value six months down the line. And so the lender will charge you interest on their money because they're also trying to retain its value 6 months down the line. So all you are doing is literally starting from one point to go 6 months, or 6 months to get what you want, or you actually have what you want today and just pay down in 6 months.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around this because I'm at least in this space and I still am a little bit confused. So I'm imagining like the average Zambian out there. Are you trying to tell me that if I save my money now, the factor of inflation, which is inflation being prices going up, that's going to cancel out the interest that I would have paid if I had borrowed money?
So literally you would say it that way. So it retains, okay, I don't want to sound very technical, but it's called purchasing power. So you see what your money can buy at a given time is what you are working at. So if I find something, so the bag of cement was less than 50 last year. And I've been telling myself, okay, I'm saving up 1,000 kwacha every month and then I'll start building 6 months down the line. So if, say I save 5,000 kwacha and the bag of cement was 50 kwacha then, I was going to buy 100 bags.
No.
But now, I buy less than 100.
45.
So,
Yeah.
And I will be shocked, in that state because my plan was 100 bags.
Yeah.
And so suddenly I have to find money to top up for the 55 bags that I'm short.
Yeah.
That's a lot. So you can imagine if I had an opportunity to borrow money then, and I would have bought my 100 bags and probably built up my house, maybe even up to window level or something. And then I'm just paying down over time. I will sit back now and look back and have the satisfaction that, okay, at least I did something then and it was cheaper than me having to do it now. So you sort of retain, the words that you used. You said savings give you a sort of level of satisfaction.
I talked about mental. You know how like debt is like a mental stress on you. Yeah, so it gives you a mental relief when you're not owing anybody. I think it goes to mindsets.
Yeah.
Because if I'm owing money, there's this thing like, oh my God, I have to pay. Yeah. Whereas if I was saving, if things go crazy, I have an emergency or whatever, I can say, okay, this month we'll skip or we'll save half instead and then carry forward in the future. So there's that mental aspect of it,
yes.
I think.
So, so it would bring me to the question of how much do you really want what it is that you are saving for? So already in savings, there's an element of, there's no discipline in what you're doing. Because at a certain point, you cannot save. At a certain point, you can divert whatever you have saved towards, But then look, so the whole idea of savings is not to literally leave you in a place where you cannot afford the emergency. You must, someone told me something once, that before you decide how much you're going to save, you literally have to look at your whole pool of income and then add savings to your expense. So your saving is literally an expense. It's not money that is available for you to spend.
Exactly.
So you take that and then spend what is left. So now the thing is, emergencies are part of what you will be looking at. Say, okay, if I had an emergency, without touching my savings, would what I have left literally, wake me out? And then also...
Yeah, I sort of agree, but I feel like we're going off to a certain thing. But anyway, I don't think you can talk about debt without talking about savings, right? So for me in savings, I believe in having different pots of savings or working towards different goals. So you do your emergency fund, you do your opportunity fund and things like that. But sometimes, to be honest, a lot of people can't even cover 3 to 6 months of their expenses on their savings.
Okay.
So when an emergency does come, it's not no, it was in my budget. It's you were saving, maybe you're trying to build up your emergency fund and then something happened and then you have to go into that.
So you have an emergency fund. That's okay. That's good. But then, you see, you also need to know what sort of emergency is it? What is it that has come to you that you need to sort out? Does it really require for you to go and dig into your savings? Or is it something you could actually offset by, if you can access funding from somewhere, borrow money from a colleague or somewhere, whatever your source of funding at that particular time, because it's very short-lived. It's probably only a month, So if you have a constant flow of income, if you're salaried, you know that you're going to get some money at some point. And you must be disciplined enough to say, okay, this money that I have borrowed to sort out this pressing issue, I have to pay back. And once you pay it back, you are off. And your savings are not derailed at all.
Okay.
So, and then you see, there's a big difference between saving under your pillow.
Yes.
And saving in financial institutions or assets.
Yeah.
You don't literally have access to that money all the time. So now your emergency and what you have put your money in, how do you marry the two? So for example, if you bought a government security, you will not go back to Bank of Zambia and say, okay, I think I have pressure, I want my money back.
I think that then
you can't take it.
Yeah, but then that goes to your different types of savings and reasons for savings. Because if I'm saving for a short-term emergency, if something happens, somebody falls sick and I need a quick 5,000 kwacha, there's no way I'm buying a government security. I'm going to put it somewhere, maybe in my mobile money or in my current account where I can quickly access it, swipe and go, I suppose.
Of course, there is that particular element. But then you see, money that you can easily access takes away all your discipline in terms of what you are trying to do. But then there's another way around to the sort of assets that you buy, financial assets or your government paper. We don't have
government paper being
bonds and treasury bills.
Okay.
So we don't really have a very how would I put, fast moving secondary market, but you have opportunities to literally go and sell a portion of it and get back your money. Or alternatively, the banks and any other lenders that financially savvy will actually accept that as collateral. So, all you are doing is you are swapping your asset for some temporal cash, which once you offset, you get back. So it doesn't take away what you have saved, because that you still have. So your savings, you still have your target. You would have a bit of borrowing in between, but once you clear it off, then you are good to go. So the idea is you don't have to pay in terms of interest expense more than what you will get on your savings, because then you are net negative. So yeah, there's a bit of mathematics that goes on there. So you must sit down and think and say, okay, what am I receiving and what am I paying? So this minus that, is it a plus? So interest on savings, cost on debt, does it give me a plus balance? Then you are working well. But if your debt is higher in terms of cost than your savings, then you might want to get rid of your debt.
Okay.
Yes.
So before we move on from this particular sector of the conversation, I want to say a statistics, which another statistic, unfortunately, is from the United States. Again, Africa, we're not putting out a lot of information. Can we have more researchers in this field?
Join them.
Yeah, yes, definitely. But there's another statistic I was reading as I was researching this, actually. And they were saying that, I think it was by Visa, it was a study by Visa or something like that. And they were saying that an average American is about $400 away from bankruptcy. So if they had an emergency with $400, then they would be like broke. I can't do anything. Yes. And that's the developed world. These are countries that we look up to and say, oh, in the States this, in Europe this, What is that like in Zambia? You know what I mean? Like, what's the discipline to a place where $400 now is what, 8,000 kwacha? Yeah, which is even worse. Yeah. In Zambia, if somebody had an emergency of 8,000 kwacha,
then they are done for. Okay.
Your take on, especially considering the borrowing versus savings.
Okay, so like I think I mentioned earlier, that cash flow is what is important. So what are your streams of income? Because your streams of income will drive your savings and will drive you servicing your debt. So, but literally, if all you have is, if today I have 100 kwacha and then I put it away in savings and then I sit and wait for it to grow, I'm not helping myself. So I need to keep a constant flow. So I should have my money work for me in a certain way that even if I put a portion of it away, I have some money that is giving me, that is keeping me going.
Yeah.
So I have a return on my savings. I have some cash flow that I'm working around with. And even if I got into debt, half the time we borrow just for luxury. We borrow for personal assets, But then the question is, fine. I mean, we all need to live. We have needs and we only live once anyway. So if I want a car, why not have it? But the question is, half the time, what am I using my car for? Just to drive around, show off, and I'm putting gas. So I'm using more and more money. But then if what I need my car for really is to take me from point A to B, and I have some economic activity between the 2 points, I'm actually retaining something. It could not be as much as I'm putting in terms of gas, but I'm retaining something. So I have a buffer, at the end of the day, even if I was going to be looking bankruptcy ahead of me, but there's a bit of inertia, between me and bankruptcy because of the activities that I'm carrying on.
Yeah.
So it's not just, okay, so because I have my salary and I have fixed myself, I'll be saving 1,000 kwacha for this long. And then, come your emergency, you spend, and then you are derailed. So you don't even know where to start from.
Yeah. Okay, I hear you. So we are going to go to break. And on the other side, we are going to talk to Mwaka about good debt versus bad debt. Because you mentioned something there, borrowing for luxuries. This is Jane Mazimba. You're watching Money and Me on Live TV. And welcome back. My guest today is Mwaka Kopa Kopa, and she's telling us that debt is not bad. I'm still struggling to wrap my head around that. Before the break, you talked about what we are borrowing for. Well, you touched on it a little bit, like, are we just borrowing for luxuries and things like that? So I want to take you a little bit back. When we talk about debt, are we talking about the 200 kwacha that I owe my friend next door because I asked to buy tomatoes? Or are we talking about 100,000 kwacha that I'm owing the bank? And also, talk to me a little bit about what is good debt, what is bad debt.
Okay, so, well, debt is everything you have said. Even if I borrowed from a friend or I borrowed from the bank, I'll tell you there are people who've borrowed money from the bank because they are just happy, excited about the opportunity to borrow, but they have no plan for the money that they have borrowed. So money is sweet now. Yeah, I have 100,000.
Spenders.
I mean, why not? Where are you? What are you doing?
Let's go.
Let's chill. I want new clothes. I want everybody to see that, okay, I have money to spend. And then, 1 month, 2 months down the line, every month on my pay slip, I have money going out.
The pain.
The pain. So, and then becomes very painful because there's nothing for you to look at to say this is where this money is. So imagine you spend your borrowings on maybe, a house, So then you walk around and say, okay, as much as every month there's a deduction in your pay slip, but there's a house that you will look at. You stand there and you are proud. You are happy with what you have done. But if you have borrowed and you have done nothing and you continue repaying for 4 or 5 years, that is misery.
Yeah.
And that is bad debt. It is extremely bad debt because you will struggle through it. It will always pain because now you feel like you are giving the bank money for free. But the bank gave you money and, well, you what's the name of the guy in the Bible? You were the prodigal son and you just went and spent out and you just came back.
Yeah. So if we're looking at good debt, what should we be considering as we approach so-and-so who just got his pension and is looking to invest or whatever, he's looking to grow his money. Before I approach him or before I go to the bank who've told me, oh, now there's COVID, so interest rates have gone down, you can borrow. What should I be thinking of? What should I be assessing? What are my parameters?
Okay, so your parameters are, firstly, what do you need the money for? Everybody needs money. But the question is, what do you need your money for? So is it just you go borrow this money? You know very well at the back of your mind that there's an expense to it. It's not money you're borrowing for free. It's not money that you will just get and pay whenever you think you should pay back. You have a commitment. It's a contract that you have made and you must pay. There will even be some form of collateral. Even if you are borrowing from money lenders or even a colleague, they will demand, okay, give me something in exchange for this. So now the question is, what are you going to do to avoid losing what you have put up in place of your borrowing? That's one. Or do you not mind losing whatever it is that you have given as collateral? So you can as well be lavish about it and they'll take what you have. But you see, that's how most people have ended up in a debt burden.
Yeah.
Especially with these Shylocks, is you give up your white book. People have given up their titles. People have given up a whole lot of things just to have some money now. And then the debt trap is that if you continue borrowing to pay off debt, then you will never be out of it. So I borrow from you and pay the next person. Next time I'm borrowing from someone else to pay this guy off. All I'm doing is, and then as I keep borrowing, I'm borrowing principal and interest because that's what I owe you. So meaning my debt has grown.
So it's growing
with the
and
next
growing.
person.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So my first debt was just principal.
Yes.
But if I borrow somewhere else to pay you back, I'm borrowing a bigger amount because it's covering
principal and interest. And then, well, it's never endless. So you keep going like that, and at a certain point you have nowhere else to borrow. So what happens to you? Then you get yourself in this debt
you
trap.
become known as Vachite.
Yes, so
Who's
that
always
one doesn't
asking?
pay back. Everybody is calling you, and then so you would have come from having some sort of good type of debt. At least bank debt is cleaner. It's off your pay slip and all stuff like that. But then you see over time, depending on what you're doing, whether you're working or you have a business, the value of your money is not the same. So whatever you have left X your debt, at a certain point may not sustain you. And that leads you to borrow some more, unless you have somewhere to look up or you have a business where you are actually going to increase your streams of income and you can still sustain at least your barest minimum lifestyle. So from that end, some people have been forced now to go get into bad debt. So bad debt is debt that grows exponentially. It's debt that grows every day. Someone tells you, okay, you want 1,000 kwacha, okay, you give me back 1,500.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
Why are we comfortable getting that?
So because we find ourselves in desperate situation. But then, like I said, the question is, how desperate is the situation? Is it so desperate that you should go and put your life up for it? Or can it wait? Or can you do it in a better way than literally just pulling up all your savings and pay it off, or jumping into this toxic debt to pay it off? So, the other angle that this has gone to is village banking.
Lord.
So village banking is a good thing.
It's a problem.
And it's a bad thing. So this is something I have found out about village banking. So it's a group of people, that are trying to help each other. So the money system works in such a way that there's always those with excess and there's always those with a deficit in terms of money. So those with excess will bring their money to the table. Those with deficit will borrow their money and will bring it back. So now a number of people will borrow because there's access to funding. It's generally cheaper depending on the terms and conditions of the group.
We need to talk about these calculations though. Yes. Because honestly, I feel like you will walk into a bank, for instance, at this period when interest rates were a bit high, you would walk into a bank and the bank would say 35% per annum.
Yes.
And you'd be like, oh no, it's expensive.
Yeah.
But you're willing to borrow somewhere else where it's 5-10% per month.
Per month.
Are we doing the mathematics correctly? Because if you're borrowing 10% per month, you're actually paying 120% per annum. So,
we are very, very literal about what we think. So for me, it's 5 versus 35, which is bigger.
It's the
35.
It's a mental issue.
Exactly. So all I'm looking at is, not everybody obviously understands the mathematics behind paying back a loan, or paying down debt. So, if I'm borrowing 10,000 kwacha today at 5% per month, right? I'll be paying 500 kwacha every month. And I feel like 500, it's only 500, so I can afford to look around for 500 and pay it off. But then also it's the time period that I have to repay. So some will allow you not to pay down anything until the last month that it expires. So if it's 6 months period, so you pay your 10,000 back at 6 months, but you'd have been paying interest monthly, And then with the bank, the difference is that it amortizes. Well, by amortizing is that you are paying down, so it's coming down every other month.
So you're covering
and interest.
Principal. Yeah,
exactly. So it becomes cheaper in that instance, except that the demand on your cash flow at a particular given time is a bit higher on the other side because you have an amount that you are committed to pay. So most people will fall for the flexibility of the other side, but it is generally expensive and it is risky because it is based on trust.
This is bringing us back to village banking. Talk to me about village banking and this borrowing in these groups. If we say this is a good thing that we are doing, why are we hearing so many defaulters? And so has run away with 70,000 from this group. This group failed to share out because, debt.
Okay. So in groups, there's 2 types of people that join. So like I said, there's those that have surplus and those that have a deficit. So those with surplus want to make money. They are in it to say, okay, my money is going to grow. And then there's those with a deficit. So they want to borrow. But like I said, that borrowing, the underlying factor of good debt is for what reason are you borrowing? What is it that you're going to get out of your borrowing? Is it something you are going to look at and say, okay, I achieved ABCD because I borrowed money? Or I literally just borrowed money and I have nothing to show for it. And so if I have nothing to show for it, it's painful for me to pay back the owner of the money because I feel like I'm just giving them money, And so that's why people walk away. So that's why you find people end up defaulting and yeah. And then, so the movement is that even if I brought in a 1 quarter, they can give me 3 quarter, So, but the 2 quarter over my 1 quarter is somebody else's money. So if I don't bring that money back, it means that person does not get their money.
Okay, so I want you to hold that thought. We're going to take another break. And then when we come back, you will finish off telling us about village banking, but you'll also tell me like the 3 things I must assess before, like the numbers. What am I calculating? What should I compare from this institution to this institution before I take out a loan? Okay? You're watching Money and Me, and today we're talking debt management with Mwaka Kopa. See you after the break. Welcome back. Today we're talking to Mwaka Kopa, and she has shocked us by saying debt is not bad. So before the break, we were just on about savings groups and why we are hearing so many default. So before I go to a savings group to borrow, or before I go to the bank to borrow, talk to me. I know we talked about what should you look out for. You said we should think about what it is that we want the money for. But talk to me about the actual numbers, the dates. What is the implication in terms of the value of that money if I'm borrowing for 12 months versus 3 months?
Okay, so obviously time matters in pricing of money. So what you pay, the cost you pay for 3 months, even if it was an identical rate. So assuming you're paying 10% in 3 months, and you're going to pay 10% in 12 months, at the end of 3 months you pay less. You pay way much less than what you will pay in 12 months.
So the quicker I pay off my debt,
the cheaper it is.
The cheaper to be.
Exactly. And so that's why I said sometimes it's very important to have a plan for why you were borrowing. So you don't want to have an extended debt when what you are using it for is 1, short-lived, and 2, it's something you can actually clear off over a short period of time.
But what about this thing we say? Well, I think I'm also like a culprit. I've done it before in my debt days where you'd say, oh, what I actually need is a 40,000. But just for a buffer, let me get 60.
Yes.
I can pay this off in 4 months, but just to give myself breathing room, let me say I'll pay it off in a year.
Yes.
Yeah, so those things, are those real considerations, or were we just literally being indisciplined?
Well, there's a bit of indiscipline there, but then there's consideration also. So remember, interest is charged for uncertainty purposes. We're trying to cushion what happens in the future. So if you feel, 6 months is a bit too short for you and you want to give yourself 2 months more, that's okay. It's better actually to have slightly an extended period and discipline yourself to cover it before your target period. That way you make a saving. So you see, savings is not only through putting money aside, but it's also in how much of your expenses you can reduce.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll give you examples of companies that have grown over time. If you really look at their balance sheets, you will find that there's a debt element to it.
There's lots of debt.
Yes.
On most companies, actually, even these public institutions,
Yes.
When you look at their annual reports, you see chunks.
Yes. So now the question is, why are they borrowing? You expect that they have all this money. Why do they need to borrow? But then for you to grow, for companies to grow, they need an investment now. So literally the example I gave you, to say, okay, if I want a car, I can choose to have the car today or wait to save up 6 months and get the car then. But the question is, if I'm looking at what goods the car is going to give me now, so why not have it now through a borrowing? Which is exactly how companies will grow. So they'll borrow money, buy equipment, if they want to grow their plant, build a new plant, set up in a different town, and then eventually they have new cash flows. And that goes to cover up that debt. But they would have grown. They would not be where they are. So, but most of us borrow and We don't go up. We
We're borrowing to go to Zanzibar.
Okay. So you go
On
to
a girls'
Zanzibar,
trip.
go on a girls' trip, have fun, drink, come back, and you are all relaxed. Then what?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's the big question. Then what? You still have to leave.
Mm.
You know? So it's pretty much, you know, a very difficult thing to balance.
So what I'm hearing you say is, if I have a plan for the money, if I am borrowing, for instance, say I want to borrow and buy a house,
Yes.
but by buying the house, then I'm freeing up this 4,000 kwacha of rentals that I
Exactly.
pay here, and that's what's going to go and pay off the loan. Then
Yes.
that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay. We touched a little bit on the calculations.
Yes.
What should I look out for? The 35% per annum versus 5%
Versus 5%
per month.
per month. Yes.
What else should we be looking out for as people, as individuals, as we navigate this space? Say I'm a business owner, I want to expand my business, and I'm looking for debt financing.
Yes.
What should I be assessing as I look at
assessing,
different
yes.
institutions?
Okay, so the first thing is obviously the price on the debt. So 35% per annum versus 5% per month for 5 years.
It's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 5% by 12 is
60.
60 by 5 is 300. 35% per annum by 5. 35 by 5 is 70, it's 140. That's 35. So it's about 175. So you can already see the difference there. You know, you are paying almost 2 times on the 5% that you're paying per month than having a loan that you pay down per annum. And then also, the fact that you have borrowed from a bank, you know, there's a contract. There's something more binding than generally borrowing from your friends. So it instills some discipline in you. And so that will push you to make sure that you achieve whatever it is that you borrowed that money for. Because you know that come what may, you know, either I lose my collateral if it's collateralized, or, I mean, defaulting is another story. You might never have to borrow anywhere else in the country.
I was about to ask that, because now apparently there's a trend of people pawning off assets they don't want against debt. So I have this land or property will go somewhere that nobody wants to live on, I can't farm on it or whatever. So I go and borrow against it with the mindset that, okay, I'll just default and the bank will take it. What are the implications of that on me as a person or as my business for the future?
So you see, there's a term in Nyanja. Was it Bembarata? Umlandu wandala mataubola. So it haunts you for the rest of your life. So you see, the banks, all these institutions have records of how you performed in your debt. And now there's the Credit Reference Bureau.
Yeah, CRB.
Yes, so there's that record. So, you know, so for some time, you may not be able to borrow until you are cleared off. But then the process of you cleaning up your bad record is even more expensive than you just, you know, being the good citizen, being the good debtor, and you just sort out your debt on time. So, and then you may not have the real problem now. In the time when the real problem finds you, you have no access to cheap funding. And so you end up finding yourself in toxic debt. So you wipe out your savings and then you go and borrow high, just, you know, to sort yourself out. And which is the trap that hopefully everybody can avoid. You know, you just don't want to be in bad debt. You don't want to be a bad debtor to someone. You don't want to carry this bad debt that gives you sleepless nights every time. We've seen people literally lose weight just on debt.
Hey, we're losing weight because we're on keto.
Yeah, right. And then, you know, then there's people who are constantly running away from people. You know, and then, you know, these Shylock guys, they follow you,
It's embarrassing.
Yes,
We've
and they'll
seen
look
it.
for you high and low.
Yeah.
And so half the time, you know, you don't even have time now to do a business or find alternative sources of cash flows to sort out your debt because you're hiding from these guys.
Yeah. I mean, with those words, I don't think we can emphasize anymore. Please, as we close, tell us where we can find you. If somebody wants to know more about this, they want to talk to you, maybe they've got a little bit of extra money and they want to invest. How do they find you? What are your social media handles?
Okay. I have a weird Facebook account. So anyway, so you could search for me using my name. So Mwaka Kopa Kopa. So you pop up. My Facebook account is Mwaka Vana Manyoni. I have a son.
Manyoni.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kopa Kopa. You catch me there. You catch me on Insta. It's Mwaka K. And also on LinkedIn, you could find me Mwaka Kopa Kopa.
Do you respond to your DMs? If we slide in your DMs,
I will respond 50% chance, but I will always respond.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So that was Mwaka Kopa Kopa on managing our debt. And you have been watching Money and Me on Live TV.